You've seen lots of rights under attack. The freedom of speech is under attack. The freedom of press is under attack. The Fourth Amendment right is under attack there. All of these things have become the object of destruction by ICE and by the Trump administration.
Congressman Jamie Raskin confronts witnesses over disturbing allegations. ICE agents using force against protesters, communities living in fear, and constitutional rights being pushed to the breaking point. What unfolds is not just a policy debate, but a chilling warning about the state of civil liberties in America, as claims of warrantless actions, intimidation, and violence raise urgent questions about whether the rule of law is being upheld or quietly dismantled.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Price, I think we've seen you now 4 times. We met you in Brussels. We met you in London. You've come twice to testify here. So we're familiar with your views. I do think you call yourself a civil libertarian, someone who's a champion of free speech. Would you agree with me that nobody should be shot or killed by their government for exercising their freedom of expression?
Absolutely, people shouldn't be killed unless there's obviously there's an investigation, I believe, underway. I think in the instance you're referring to. But
how about reporting on the activities of government officials? Do you think that the public has the right to take notes, to video record, and then to publicly disseminate information about what our police officers, ICE agents, or government officials are doing? Is that part of the freedom of expression?
I think people have the right to share information online, sir.
Yeah, and our courts have certainly found that. So thank you for coming and contributing your voice on that. Mr. Mayo, thank you for coming all the way from Minnesota. I hope you don't feel like you've entered the twilight zone here. We're having another hearing about the imaginary threat to the transphobic material of Irish comedians against the European Union, and we can't seem to have a hearing about ICE agents shooting Americans in the face for exercising their First Amendment rights. Please give us a sense of your experience of what the topic of this hearing is versus what's going on in our country.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the most significant threat to free speech in our lifetime. That is not happening online or digitally right now. It is happening on the streets of Minnesota and Minneapolis, as well as the most significant attack on our Fourth Amendment and the principles of the Fourth Amendment and the protections against warrantless arrest as well.
Well, you made a really significant point in your testimony when you said, we, of course, are seeing tens of thousands of Minnesotans out in the streets every day protesting this reign of terror. But you've also said that a lot of people are afraid now to go out because of the violence that's occurred. In other words, those huge protests could be even much huger without government oppression. Am I reading you right on that?
Yes, I mean, so I can't describe in words fully how disruptive, terrifying, and intense the feeling is in Minnesota right now. People are scared to leave their homes. People are scared to go about their daily business. And I'm not talking about just immigrants. I'm talking about immigrants with legal status. I'm talking about people of color. I'm talking about whole swaths of the community that are afraid to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm talking about people who are exercising their protected First Amendment rights of free speech.
Well, are the ICE agents who we see ripping people out of their cars, knocking down doors without warrants, shooting people, are they distinguishing between U.S. citizens and immigrants, or are these authoritarian violent tactics being used against anybody who they perceive to be in their way?
What we have heard, starting when the surge began in late November, we started to immediately hear of reports of unconstitutional activity. The wild use of pepper spray on crowds, peaceful protesters, the pointing of semi-automatic weapons indiscriminately, the deploying of tear gas in playgrounds and in residential neighborhoods. It has been a broad swath of unconstitutional activity.
Well, are the people of Minnesota upset about the way that the European Union Digital Services Act is affecting Elon Musk? Are people talking about that?
I'm here to talk about what is happening on the ground in Minnesota and the most significant free speech issue happening in the country today.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you came, and we appreciate the fact that the ACLU is standing up for people's rights. You've seen lots of rights under attack. The freedom of speech is under attack. The right to assemble peacefully is under attack. The right to petition government for redress of grievances is under attack. The freedom of press is under attack. The Fourth Amendment right not to have your door knocked down without a search warrant based upon probable cause issued by a neutral, independent magistrate is under attack there. All of these things have become the object of destruction by ICE and by the Trump administration. I just wonder if you would reflect generally on the state of freedom in your city.
I can tell you that it feels like the rule of law is under siege in Minnesota.
This exchange delivers a stark and unsettling portrait of a nation grappling with the boundaries between enforcement and authoritarianism. What emerges from this testimony is not simply a disagreement over immigration policy or protest management. It is a deeper confrontation over whether constitutional protections still serve as real barriers against government overreach, or whether they are being worn down by aggressive tactics justified in the name of security. The witnesses describe a climate in which fear is becoming normalized. Communities are not just worried about deportation or legal consequences. They are worried about being caught in the wrong place, at the wrong time, and becoming collateral damage in sweeping enforcement actions. When people who hold legal status, U.S. citizens, journalists, and peaceful demonstrators all report similar experiences of intimidation, the concern extends far beyond immigration. It becomes a question of whether basic civic participation itself is being chilled. The testimony suggests that force is no longer limited to narrowly defined threats. Pepper spray on crowds, tear gas in residential neighborhoods, weapons pointed during routine encounters, and aggressive crowd control in areas where families and children are present all paint a picture of escalation. These are not abstract allegations. They are descriptions of daily life in communities that now feel like they are being policed as hostile territory rather than served as citizens. What makes this exchange particularly powerful is the shift in focus from online speech and theoretical censorship to physical, real-world consequences. The argument presented is that the greatest threat to free expression is no longer just digital moderation or platform policies, but the fear of physical retaliation for speaking, assembling, or documenting government activity. When people are afraid to protest, afraid to record, and afraid to leave their homes, the practical ability to exercise constitutional rights begins to erode, regardless of what the law says on paper. Raskin's questioning underscores a central tension. Enforcement agencies are granted authority to uphold public safety, but that authority carries strict limits. Those limits exist precisely to prevent the transformation of law enforcement into a tool of political or social control. When warrantless actions, indiscriminate force, and broad intimidation tactics become normalized, the safeguards designed to protect both citizens and the legitimacy of institutions begin to fail. The broader implication of this exchange is not limited to Minnesota or to one federal agency. It speaks to a national struggle over how power is exercised, who is protected by the Constitution, and whether fear is replacing due process as a governing principle. When communities believe that rights depend on how they are perceived, their status, their appearance, or their willingness to stay silent, trust in institutions collapses. What is at stake here is more than a single policy dispute. It is the credibility of the rule of law itself. If people come to believe that constitutional protections are optional, unevenly applied, or ignored during moments of political pressure, then the damage is not temporary. It reshapes how citizens view their government, their safety, and their place in the democratic process. This exchange serves as a warning. The strength of a democracy is measured not by how it treats the powerful, but by how it treats the vulnerable, the dissenters, and those who challenge authority. When fear replaces rights and force replaces accountability, the consequences extend far beyond any single agency or administration. They redefine the relationship between the people and the state, and once that line is crossed, restoring trust becomes far harder than breaking it.